because this is serious to us. This is what we're here for. We love to learn. We love to help others, and you're in the right place at the right time. So it's my distinct honor and privilege to introduce our guest speaker tonight. Joan and I first met Vena Jones-Cox early in our career in 2001, when she was the president of the Ohio Real Estate Investors Association, and we attended the OREA convention for the first time. We credit our success to our early beginnings when meeting Vena, and we literally bought every single program, Vena, 11 of them, at that event.
Thank you for that.
That was the beginning, I'm serious, that was the beginning of our career. So it was a great journey from that point on, and we have the ability now, and the graciousness of working with Vena in a different capacity. The directors are involved in a collaborative mastermind group for RIAs across the country, and it's been absolutely great. Ron LeGrand puts that on, and we've had a wonderful time, and we've learned so much. And the biggest thing I can tell you is Vena knows her stuff. Vena is not only an active full-time third-generation real estate entrepreneur for a quarter century, but she's been a principal in well over 800 plus deals. And her business still does dozens of transactions per year. Plus, she is a licensed real estate broker in Ohio for nearly 2 decades. Vena is a multiple-time past president of the Real Estate Association of Greater Cincinnati, the Ohio Real Estate Investors Association, and the National Association of Real Estate Investors. Plus, she's the current president of Central Ohio Real Estate Entrepreneur, the host of public radio's Real Life Real Estate Investing for over 15 years, as well as a guest lecturer at the Cato Institute think tank in Washington, D.C., on the negative effects of government overregulation on private investors. Vena is a prolific author of articles on a wide range of real estate investment subjects for many newsletters and publications, including her own, as well as one she was featured in as one of 21 elite investors nationwide in Gary Keller's best-selling book, The Millionaire's Real Estate Investor. Everybody know who Gary Keller is? Co-founder of Keller Williams. It is certainly, without a doubt, a fantastic opportunity for our FGC RIA tonight to have the opportunity to have such a high-quality real estate investor. And without any further ado, please get on your feet. Let's give her a warm Southwest Florida Real Estate Investors Association welcome. Vena Jones-Cox.
I cannot tell you how happy I am to be here this evening. And not just because you're all wonderful human beings, I'm sure, but because it was 19 degrees when I left Cincinnati, and yeah, and I walked in here and immediately ran into 3 people that I knew from Ohio and Illinois and Long Island and various.
Because it's warm here.
I get it. It's starting to sink in that people come down here for a reason. So appreciate you all being here tonight. On what I understand is actually a fairly cold week here in South Florida. I did not bring it with me. Stop accusing me of that. That did not happen. I am taking it with me when I go, though. Just FYI. All right. So do we know why we are here this evening?
Yeah.
To learn what now? To learn wholesaling. To learn about a very cool strategy that is one that allows you to do deals without using your own cash. Does that sound attractive at all to anybody? And the even better news is it doesn't require that anybody in the transaction have good credit or bad credit or any other credit, because it is a cash transaction. And it's one that will allow you to earn $10,000 a month, very part-time. $10,000 in cash. That's like one deal here in South Florida. So if you can manage to find 20 hours a month to work on the things I'm going to tell you need to work on tonight, you can make $10,000 a month doing this and still keep your job if that's what you want to do, or continue to manage your rental properties, or whatever else it is you would like to do with your life. Does that sound pretty good? Yeah. Is $10,000 a month still good money down here? Yeah. It's pretty good money where I live, especially as a part-time income. So, and Mr. Cameraman, I am really sorry, but I wander and wander and wander, and you have your job cut out for you tonight. So, we are here to find out some things like how this is working in 2015. Now, how many of you have wholesaled property at some point in your lives? It's about 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, this is not confession time. You should be proud of this. Who's wholesaled a property at some point in their lives? Because people are going, oh, yeah, is that right? There's about 10 of you, it looks like, that have done that. How many of you have bought a property from a wholesaler at some point? Same 10 people. What's up with that? Yeah, it's a little different now than it was in 2009, isn't it? Those of you who have wholesaled before, the market has changed yet again. The market seems to have done nothing but change since about 2007, but it has accelerated a lot in about the past 13 to 15 months, and we're going to talk about what that really means and how things are a little bit different in what you're going to do. We're going to talk about what you need to know and do in order to wholesale properties. Now, they told me I had 15 hours. Is that correct? Yeah. We're going to be looking at this from a pretty high level tonight because we have 90 minutes together roughly, and I'd love to be able to teach the 3-day class to you tonight, but that just can't be done. So if you take lots of good notes, you will walk away. I know you too. What is up with this? You will walk away with the list of things that you need to focus on if you are going to move forward and do this, okay? Because wholesaling is the simplest way of making money in real estate. When you compare it to being a landlord, which I also am, and rehabbing properties, which I also do, and even doing things like lease options, they require kind of a little bit bigger of a set of skills and knowledge and training than wholesaling does. Now, don't hear me to have said that wholesaling requires no skills, because the people out there who go out there and try and wholesale with no skills very quickly develop a bad reputation amongst serious buyers. Is there anyone that you can think of in this region that is a wholesaler that buyers don't really take seriously because they are always offering bad deals, basically? I mean, that's the bottom line, is the deals are bad ones. I see a lot of heads nodding. So we're going to talk about what you need to do to not be that person, to be the person who knows what they're doing from day one and goes out and makes good deals and lots of money for both yourself and other people. We are here to dispel some myths. It is the bane of my existence that every guy who gets on Flip This House decides that when he's done, he can go out and teach a wholesaling class, even though he's probably never wholesaled a deal in his life. And there is a lot of bad information out there about wholesaling. I get courses, I go to seminars, I see things online, and it just doesn't mesh with what I know after 19 years wholesaling. Like, you know, what they're talking about is not how it works in real life. So we're going to talk about what some of those myths are and try and get them out of your mind. Now, some of them are from this bad training. Some of them are just flat out from old information. What you're hearing was true in 2006, just not so much true now. And also, if you've never wholesaled a property and you're not familiar with this strategy, some of it may just be your misunderstanding of how it must work based on the fact that you've just never done it before. So we're going to spend some time on those things so that you don't misunderstand what we're doing. Now, ultimately, aren't we here to make more money in 2015? Yeah, we are. Now, there's only one person who's going to make any money tonight. Would you like to guess who that is? That would be me. It probably will not surprise you that I have brought with me some home study courses that some of you will take advantage of here at the end of the meeting, because they're going to greatly accelerate your ability to do these and start putting checks in your pocket. But I would like to ask this, okay? We're all seated at tables, which means that when you get up, when the sales pitch slide comes up, you have to walk over everyone else. You are disturbing everyone else. You are keeping people for whom this might be the perfect thing for them tonight from hearing about it. So if I give out nothing but information for like 80 minutes, can you sit still for the last 10? Thank you. And she's at the end, and she still agrees. to say. So is that a deal? I'll give you tons of information, but then just be patient with me as I tell you what I have to offer you at the end. A little bit about how I got here. I always sit in the back and kind of smile at the resume that people read about me, because you know there's the stuff you've done, and then there's like how you actually got there, right? I got here because I am a recovering landlord. Now, what I mean by that is not that I no longer own rental properties. I do. I own about 35 single and small multifamily properties, because that is the way that you build wealth in real estate. It's not by flipping anything. You don't build wealth by flipping anything. You build wealth by owning properties and ultimately doing what with them? Because when you actually really start making money on your rentals, is it when you have a big mortgage on them? No, because when you have a big mortgage on them, between the payment, the taxes, and the insurance, the flood insurance, the maintenance, the vacancies, and blah, 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 your cash flow is actually pretty small. But once they pay off, all that money you were given to the bank now goes where? Into your pocket. Yeah, 30-year mortgages seemed like a great idea to me when I was 22, you know, 5 years ago. And now they seem like a really bad idea to me. You know, in retrospect, this idea of, you know, you work on this property, 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 and ultimately someday it'll make you money. No longer appeals to me. Once I discovered wholesaling, I figured out a couple of things. Number one, it's a lot easier to run your rental properties really well when you have cash in the bank. Right? When the tenant calls and says the roof's leaking, you go, oh man, it really needs a new roof, but I can't really pay for that right now, so I'm just going to patch it, and we'll hope it lasts another rainy season, right? When you just go ahead and stabilize your properties and keep them stabilized and keep them nice, you get the best tenants. And they stay and they pay, and it's awesome. And also, I discovered that if I could wholesale one deal a year and take the after-tax profits from that wholesale deal and take it down to my bank and say, here, this is a principal payment on my 30-year loan, I could pay off most of those 30-year loans in between 8 and 11 years, not 30. So when I say I'm a recovering landlord, I don't take out 30-year mortgages on my properties anymore. I pay them all off in 5 years. I couldn't pick my tenants out of a lineup. Like, I do not know who they are. I do not talk to them. I do not deal with them. The only thing I do with them is approve them when my property manager sends them over. Because guess what you can afford when your rentals are paid off? A property manager, right? You know, right now you're going, man, another 10%. I don't think I can take that out of there's no money there to pay them. Well, guess what? You can pay them when you have paid off properties. So wholesaling has done more for me than just create a lot of cash in my life. It's also created a situation where I was able to really accelerate that time when you truly are living off the passive income from your rental properties. Now, I didn't discover wholesaling until I had already been buying rentals for about 5 years. I grew up in a family of landlords, as Stephanie mentioned. It was not a business I wanted to get into based on what I saw growing up. How many of you are landlords? How many of you have kids? How many of you have made your kids work in your landlording business when they were little? All of you, yep. Yeah, my dad did the same thing. You know, I spent my summers cleaning the roaches out of the gaskets in the refrigerators when the apartments turned over, and it wasn't something I wanted to do. I wanted to work in corporate America. I went to college. I went to work in corporate America. It lasted 6 weeks and ended badly. And having trained for nothing else other than that job that I got and then either quit or was fired from, depending on who you ask, I didn't have any choice but to go to work for my dad temporarily just to make ends meet. And worked in his business for about 2 years and went to a RIA meeting where there was this guy talking about this thing called wholesaling. And I couldn't believe what he was saying. He was saying, man, you can, you know, just put a property under contract and flip the contract, and this was, remember, this was like 93, 94. You can make $3,000. A lot of money in 93 and 94, and a lot of money to me at the time. And I at the end of his presentation, I went to the back of the room and I split his $2,500 boot camp up amongst 3 credit cards. because it was toward the end of the month and I hadn't gotten my rents on my properties I owned, so I had to put it on 3 credit cards. And I went to his boot camp in Chicago, and I came back from that and I said, Dad, I want to do this wholesaling thing. It's awesome. You can make all this cash. And he said, we're not doing that. I said, why in the world would you not want to do that? And he gave me a 25-minute lecture about how it was stupid to sell properties because then you lost the tax benefits and the other guy made all the money, and if you just got $3,000 or $5,000 cash, then what you were giving up was $20,000 in equity and all this money for the whole rest of your entire life. And I said, yeah, that sounds great. let me do that. So I had to leave my dad's company because he did not want the company to wholesale, and he didn't want me to wholesale while I lived in the while I worked at the company, and I'm still living that down to this day. 16 years later. On Thanksgiving, my dad still says, you still wholesale in those properties? Yeah, so if you're not getting any support from your family on this real estate thing, just know that you're not alone. I mean, my family was in real estate, and I didn't get any support on this wholesaling thing. So I bought my first rental in '86. I wholesaled my first property, or sorry, '89. I wholesaled my first property in '96. Today, my business is about 85% wholesaling. So really, people say, are you a wholesaler? And I say, no, I find deals, and then I decide what to do with them. And many times, the best thing to do with them is just sell them to somebody else for a quick cash profit. Don't worry about them anymore. But sometimes the answer is, hey, this is a great rental. It's near my house. I want to keep it. It looks easy to manage. It looks like a property that I want to own. Or maybe I lease option it, or maybe I rehab it and resell it. But most of the deals that you're going to run across in your life are not properties that you are going to want to own long term. Have you found that to be true? That sometimes you see a deal that it works perfectly on paper. Like on paper, you're like, oh yeah, this is a good deal. But then when you look at it more closely, it's either too far away, or it's in a school district you don't like, or it needs more work than you want to do. That's what you do with all those deals, is you wholesale them to someone else. I wholesale around a house a week. It really works out to about 1 every 8 days. I make an average profit of $6,000 to $10,000. This might be something that you want to write down because people are always asking me, like, how much should I make on a wholesale deal? And the real answer to that is you're going to make the difference between whatever you put it under contract for and whatever somebody else thinks is a good deal. That's what you're going to make. But on average, what I'm finding with my students all over the country, and this has been for years and years and years, this has been the case, they are making about 5% of whatever the median house price is in the area in which they're working. So as an average, you can figure you're going to be at about 5% of the median house price in the main area in which you're working. In Cincinnati, median house price are about 120. So 6 to 10 is the range in which our wholesale deals usually fall. Most of you are probably working in more expensive areas than areas where the median house price is $120,000. So your fee per deal should actually be higher than mine is. Now, do you think that I wholesale a deal every 8 days and also spend 2 weeks in South Florida in February all by myself? No, you think I might have some help with that? Yeah, so one of the questions that you need to answer yourself now, and then again probably a year or two from now when you get really good at wholesaling and you start realizing that there's more deals out there than there is your time, is how far do you want to take this? Because you can take it to a very, very high level, but what you are going to do in exchange is you are going to have lots of people working for you. There are people in my market who wholesale more deals than I do every year. In fact, one of them is a student of mine. His name is Mitch. And yes, he sent me this picture when I said, hey, Mitch, you got a nice picture of yourself? And he sent a picture of himself with his arm around an island girl. Mitch probably sells 100 or more wholesale deals a year. And he also has an apartment business on top of that. So Mitch makes upwards of $1 million a year. And he has 13 or 14 employees who run that business for him. Now some of them are like maintenance people and folks like that, but he's got acquisitions coordinators, he's got sales coordinators, he's got administrators, he's got virtual assistants who help him round up names. And I intentionally have chosen not to run a business that big because I don't like managing people. Like, that sounds like a nightmare to me, to have 14 people to keep track of and hire and fire and keep around and deal with and so on. So if you want to have a really big business, you are going to have to hire more help than I have. Now, I run my wholesaling business with a full-time acquisitions coordinator and a part-time bookkeeper. So two people that do most of the administrative type work, setting up the closings, all that sort of thing. And by the way, when I come back on the 21st, one of the things that we're going to talk about is how to find and hire people, starting with just the really low level. I just need somebody to answer my phones, and I don't need them full time, and I don't need them to be in my office. And what their jobs might be, and then moving on up through the ranks until you're ready to get to like an acquisitions coordinator type person. So that's going to be on Saturday morning on the 21st. That's not this upcoming Saturday. And in the afternoon, we're going to talk about how to find the deals. We're going to talk about lots of marketing stuff. So make sure you've got that marked on your calendar and you are signed up. Now, you may, on the other hand, want to be like Anita. Anita has a full-time job with the same company that fired me, and they pay her really, really well, and they give her really, really good benefits, and she kind of likes her job. So when Anita started wholesaling, she really did it because it was the thing in real estate that best fit in with her life, where she could turn it off and on, she could do a deal or two a month, she could not have to get committed to rental properties and so on long term. And one of the reasons she did this is this company has a habit of selling off entire divisions, and thus you don't have a job anymore because they sold off your entire division. And she wants this backup, right? That she knows how to do real estate, and she's got something that she can not just fall back on, but really make a very good living at should her job go away. Anita wholesales between 1 and 2 deals a month. She makes about an extra $60,000 a year wholesaling, and she does it with a virtual assistant who is overseas, who answers her calls while she's at work, runs comps for her, gets pictures off the internet. When she gets home at night, it's all there. And she just has to decide, like, do I need to call this person back right now because they seem real motivated, or can it wait because they, it just seems like one of those, maybe I'll sell you my house if you give me full price kind of calls. So we've got a whole range here from 1 to 2 deals a month part-time with just very inexpensive and not in-your-face help to big time business, but lots of management. And you're going to have to decide, like, where do I want to end up along this spectrum? As a matter of fact, how many of you want to be Mitch and make $1 million a year but have to supervise multiple people in order to do that? Because I know some people, it doesn't bother them to supervise lots of people.
We do?
Nah,
You're in.
she says you do. So I think that's what's happening. All right, how many of you want to be Anita and just sort of do it part-time and make a good income and have not too many folks in your face about it? Okay, that looks like most of you. And how many of you just want to be me and make 6 figures a year, but go into the office for 2 hours a week, because that's what I do. Well, I mean, I do. I have a 2-hour meeting with my acquisitions coordinator on Monday morning, and then we have a Skype meeting for about half an hour on Friday. And in between, if we're going to communicate, it's by email, text. He does his thing, I do my thing, and deals happen. So that's sort of the way I've chosen to live my life, and if that's the way you choose to live your life, that's great. The thing is, all of us, Anita, me, and Mitch, are all doing the same deal. It's not about the deal, it's about the structure of the business around the deal. So let's start out what the deal is. You guys seem to be familiar with wholesaling, so tell me what wholesaling is. Buy low, sell low. Market for a seller. Okay, he said market for a seller, get it under contract, pass it off to a rehabber or someone to buy and hold.
Signed contract for profit.
A signed contract for profit.
All cash.
Get a buyer's list.
get a buyer's list. All right, now we're going through the steps. All right, so it's funny to me that I can ask that question of someone who is wholesaling and they can't answer it correctly. I can say to somebody who has wholesale properties, what is wholesaling? And they say something like, well, you know, you buy properties cheap and you sell them higher. And that is completely inaccurate. Because in a typical wholesale deal, we don't buy properties at all. We put them under contract and we sell the contracts to a very specific kind of customer. And the customer, and this is important, is always another investor. We don't wholesale properties to homeowners for a variety of reasons, most of them just practical reasons, like homeowners don't typically have cash to buy a property, and also homeowners don't typically want a property that is in the kind of condition of the ones that we are wholesaling, and I'll come back to that later. But wholesaling, in its purest form, is put a property under contract, sell the contract. Right? Am I allowed to sell contracts? I am if my name's on the bottom of them. And if they don't say that they are non-assignable, which is a whole nother can of worms that you run into with things like bank-owned properties and short sales, and we're going to talk on Saturday about how to assign non-assignable contracts as well. Can't get into that right now because it takes about an hour just to explain that. What this means in real life is that typically you are not ever in the position of owning a property. So you don't sell properties because you don't own properties. You sell contracts. Now, could there ever be a situation in which it would be to your benefit for one reason or another to go ahead and buy the house and resell it? Yeah, I'll give you an example. There's a big margin, and what you're thinking is you don't want the buyer to know how much you made. I do not care if my buyer knows how much I made, because if they care, they're a bad buyer. They should only care what they're making. They should not care what I am making, right? Have you ever run into a seller who was in a burning hurry to sell, not because they just really wanted to sell, but because something was about to happen, like a tax sale, or they were imminently moving out of town or out of the country or something like that? You know, sometimes you run across people that the reason you're getting the great deal is that they need to close in 10 days and you have said, I can do that. So in that case, you might need to use someone's money to buy a property like that. But 95% of the time, 95% of the deals I do not close. They're exactly what I just said. Get the contract and sell the contract. So typically your cash investment is going to be in marketing. So how did I get that seller to contact me in the first place? If you're going to deal in MLS listed properties, you're going to need earnest money. I don't really give earnest money to sellers who are unrepresented by agents, or if we do, it's $10, because my experience is whatever earnest money I give straight to a seller that's not being held in an escrow account, it's just gone. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the deal closes or not. They're going to spend it, right? So just very small amounts of earnest money directly to sellers. You're also going to invest some time and money in education. Now there's two ways you can do that. You can buy someone else's expertise, or you can go get it on the street, which is actually more expensive and time consuming, but one way or another, you're going to get that education. And finally, your credit just doesn't matter. At what point in the I'm putting the house under contract for cash and I'm selling the contract for cash and my buyer is closing for cash, is anybody looking at anybody's credit rating? It's not happening, right? No loans are being pursued here, and thus your credit rating doesn't matter. So if you've got an 800 credit score, congratulations. You ain't going to use it in wholesaling. Not at all. There are key things that you have to do in a wholesale deal, and I'm gonna show you the list, and then we're gonna break down the list one by one, okay? The first one is you have to understand who your buyer is and what makes a good deal for him or her. because it's a different, if you're used to dealing in pretty houses where your buyer is a homeowner, or you're used to dealing in retail properties where your buyer is a homeowner, it's a very different thing to sell to an investor. Because what does an investor care about in terms of a deal? What makes them decide to buy it? How much money am I going to make, right? Whatever it is I'm going to do with the property, whether I'm going to rent it or resell it, how much money am I going to make? That's what they are focused on. Understanding who your sellers are and why they sell to you for the prices that they do. Every place I go, I'm told, well, our market's really hot and there's no good deals out there. Including Cincinnati. Every time I walk into a Cincinnati area meeting, somebody says, I don't understand how you're finding these deals. There's no good deals out there. Well, that's because you're looking in a place where there's not a lot of good deals anymore, and that is MLS. MLS has become a vast, desolate wasteland in terms of distressed properties that you can get cheap. Anybody know why that is? Okay, first of all, you've all noticed this, right? You've all seen the properties in MLS, if they are distressed, are now selling in like 3 days for more than what was being asked for them, right? Okay, so you're aware of it. Do you know why it is? Well, a piece of it is because the market has improved, there are more people like us looking for the distressed property deals. That is not the big part of it. The big part of it is there were 3.9 million foreclosures in 2009, and there were 1.8 million last year. So all the inventory that we were seeing there in 08, 09, 2010 was bank-owned properties. And there are so many fewer of them now than there were before that the banks aren't super anxious to discount them a lot. You know, why would they? They got people who want them. They got people who want them at their asking prices. So why are they going to give them the way they did in 2009, right? So the big piece of missing inventory is the bank-owned properties, and it makes the entire MLS look like it's empty because the number of bank owns has been cut in half over the past 5 years. So your sellers, your best sellers right now are people that you are reaching who for one reason or another don't want to put their properties in MLS. Now, why would someone have a property they actually wanted to sell and not want to put it in MLS?
They don't want to pay the commission.
Don't want to pay a commission. The condition of the property is often a big reason. I mean, I talked to people who said, I've had 3 agents out here and they won't even put a sign in my yard because my house is only going to sell for $75,000, and they basically said it's as much effort to sell your $75,000 house, if not more effort, than it is to sell my $500,000 listings. Right? So I may do it, but I'll only do it if you give me a minimum commission that would be the same as for a $300,000 house, right? So that's a reason. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's just they do not have time to have people coming through their house and deciding whether they want to buy it or not, and then writing an offer, negotiating back and forth, and waiting for a bank loan to happen and all that sort of thing. So your best sellers right now are ones that you find in places other than listed properties. So that is one of the ways in which the market is very different now than it was a couple of years ago. You need to focus on the right properties. You need to evaluate them correctly. This is probably the biggest, oh my gosh. This is where the folks who think that they can learn wholesaling off a 30-minute webinar or off of one of the free online, Bigger Pockets or one of the Facebook wholesaling forums, this is what they don't know that is killing them out in the market. If you come to me as a serious cash buyer and tell me a house is worth $195 and I do the comps and there has been nothing in that area that sold for more than $160 in the last year, I just wrote you off. I don't need to know anything else about you because I know the rest of the deal is not right. Right? Because if you think it's worth $195 and it's worth $160, I guarantee you're asking me for too much for the house. And of course, the other part of the evaluation is the repair costs. got a call today actually from a guy from California who bought a house at a tax sale in Cincinnati sight unseen. Yeah, and he paid $600 for the house, so he thinks he's just, you know, how could he lose, right? The lot's got to be worth $600. Here's the road, here's the house. It is in the city, but because of the topography, they have never connected it to the public sewer or water. So it has a septic tank, and let me point out, here's the road, and here's the house, and here's the water when it rains. And the thing's been vacant for 10 years, and it's falling apart, and basically I had to tell him, if you gave me $20,000, I might take it, but then I would let it go back to tax sale. I wouldn't actually do anything with it if you gave me $20,000. I mean, you have to know how to do a real evaluation of repair costs. And what repairs an intelligent person would do. I mean, when you call me and say, I have this house that's worth $195 and it only needs $5,000 in repairs and it's a great deal at $120, and I say, what are the repairs? And you say, oh, well, you know, it needs a new roof and windows, and it's got a furnace and central air, kitchen and bath could use work, and also paint and carpet. Again, you are being blocked from my cell phone from then on out because you clearly don't know what you're talking about. So these are skills that you really need to get, and it's not rocket science, ladies and gentlemen, but these are skills that you need to get so that you know how to make the right offer, so that you know how to offer properties at the right price. And finally, understanding and using the paperwork correctly. Your sellers are not going to have a purchase contract to give you. Your buyers are not going to have an assignment contract to give you. You need to provide that. You need to know how it should be filled out, who it goes to, what does and does not need to be signed by whom, all of that sort of thing. So we will break these down. The buyers are always someone who is looking to make money from the property, not to live there. If you can internalize this, what it will keep you from doing is walking into houses that, I mean, you open the door and you're almost bowled over by the smell of cat pee. If you've ever met one of those houses. And going, oh my God, no one would ever want to live here, and walking away. Because your buyer is not a homeowner. When your buyer smells that smell, what does he think?
Money.
He thinks money because he thinks, I can actually correct this relatively cheaply, and I can get a better deal on it because of the way it smells. Okay? When I work with new wholesalers, many times they'll send me emails and they'll say, well, I went and I looked at this property, but I decided not to make an offer on it because it just needs everything. And I say, okay, so at what price does needing everything make it a good deal for someone else? You have to keep this in mind, that your buyers are other investors. The second thing is your buyers have to be able to pay cash. They need to give you cash for your wholesale fee, and then they need to give the seller cash for his house. It doesn't have to be cash that's sitting in their bank right now. They can be getting their cash from partners, from private lenders, even from hard money lenders. They can get it from IRAs. What they cannot do is they cannot go get a bank loan on the property. Because A, banks don't really like to finance properties that have the sorts of problems we're often dealing with, and B, it takes too long to get bank financing, right? So you need to be dealing with cash buyers, and preferably buyers who have some experience in the field already. I don't like selling people their first deals. My deals are always good deals until I sell them to a brand new rehabber. And then they turn into bad deals immediately. Because the first time rehabber ends up spending too much money, spending money on the wrong stuff, taking too long, and then it sells and they're not happy with the profit they made because it wasn't the profit I said they should make, whereas I can sell that same deal to someone who's done some deals and they make every dime I said and more. Experienced investors are your best buyers, which is another reason that you need to be serious about getting the training you need to be able to come to them and give them a reasonable evaluation of the property. This is what it's worth. This is what it's going to cost to fix it. Because your serious buyers, the ones who've done it over and over again, don't have time to teach you what you did wrong in the evaluation. I sold about 48 properties last year, and I sold all 48 of them to about 13 buyers. That's the other good thing about your experienced buyers. They want the next deal, and the next deal, and the next deal, and the next deal, and they can do it. They can do multiple deals at the same time. Don't overlook this entire set of buyers that are not buying houses in nice bread and butter and move up areas in order to retail them, but instead are buying rental properties in rental areas in order to rent them.
$1 million idea.
Thank you. I know a lot of wholesalers get really obsessed with kind of getting the property in the neighborhood that they would like to live in, or that they would like their children to live in, and they ignore these rental areas because they think, oh, who really wants to buy properties in rental areas? Who really likes to buy properties in rental areas? Landlords, right? That's why they're rental areas. About 60% of the properties I sold last year were something like this one. This is a sexy house, right? You totally want to move into this. And you want to move it, you want to move into even more if you saw the board up across the street over here. This house is a two-family. It has a one-bedroom apartment on the first floor and a three-bedroom apartment on the second floor. The gross rents on this property are about $1,200 a month. That's total. $450 downstairs, $650 upstairs. I know those numbers don't maybe make a lot of sense to you guys. Put a 1 on the front if that makes things make more sense to you. Yeah, one of the things I've discovered about wholesaling is wherever you are in the country, you find deals the same way, you evaluate them the same way, you put them under contract in the same way, you sell them in the same way to the same people. Sometimes the numbers move around, right? When I go to LA and I talk about this, I just say put a 0 on the back of everything you see, because that's the only way it's going to make sense to you. After repair value of this house is maybe $55,000. That should tell you something about how great the neighborhood is. It's a neighborhood where when you put that 3-bedroom up for rent, all of your applicants are going to be Section 8. If you aren't willing to rent Section 8, you do not want to own a property in this neighborhood, because that's who lives in this area. Needed about $10,000 in stabilization, because you don't do a ton of work to a rental. Like, you're not going to put in a brand new $6,000 kitchen in a rental property where the rent is only $450 a month, right? But you do need to make sure the roof's not leaking, and the furnace works, and the plumbing's there, and the windows are solid and go up and down and all, or in and out around here, all that sort of stuff. So for about $10,000, you could make this property into something that was very, very livable and good for the area. I put this property under contract for $18,000. Under contract just meaning I had a signed agreement with the seller. He said he'd sell, I said I'd buy. Price was $18,000. I sold the contract for $6,900. So in other words, I found a buyer. It's a buyer that I sold 4 properties to last year. And I said, hey, I got another house in the same neighborhood as those other 3 you bought. If you want to pay a total of how much? $24,900 for this property. Here's the outcome. It'll be, you put $10,000 more in it. It'll rent for $1,200 a month gross. Your net income will be so and so. And she said, that sounds great. Let's do it. I got $6,900, and then she went to the closing and closed with my seller. Do you understand what I just said? It was not that we went to a closing at which I got $6,900 and she got $18,000. That's not how it works in my world. In my world, if I am assigning you the thing that I have that is of value, which is what? The contract, you're going to pay me when I assign it to you, not at the closing. All right, we'll come back to that in a moment, because that's some of the bad training that's out there that says you get paid at the closing. Why would you assign a contract to someone and then wait to maybe get paid later? Because you're not selling a house, right? You're not selling a house, so you don't need to wait for the house to close. You're selling a contract. So let's talk about this from the buyer's perspective, because that's what we're talking about right now, is who are these buyers? What the buyer got was a $55,000 property all in for a little under $35,000. Is that a pretty good deal? Yeah. She got $660 a month net cash flow. Now she paid cash for it, so there's no mortgage payment, but take out the taxes, take out the insurance, take out about 30% of the rent for vacancy maintenance, long-term capital repairs, etc. She's making $660 a month off this place, which is a return on her cash of 22.6%, which in America today is not bad, right? 22.6% return, that's something you can't get in other sorts of investments, typically. So you understand what the buyers are buying, right? Because you are making them good deals. You are making good deals and you are selling those good deals to them. If you don't have good deals, they won't buy from you. If you do have good deals, they will, because why would they not? Why would they not do this? The sellers. One of those myths that, this is more amongst people who are just not in our business. And if you haven't had a friend or acquaintance or somebody say this to you yet, you will eventually. Well, basically what you do is you rip off old ladies, right? I mean, you find people who don't know what their house is worth, or you're like somehow magicking them into taking something that's not good for them. That is not why sellers sell $55,000 houses for $18,000. They are not stupid. They are not uneducated. Anyone on the planet, let me say that a different way, anyone on the part of the planet that Zillow serves can find out what their house is worth in about 5 minutes. And if anything, what do they believe about what their house is worth? They believe it's worth more than it actually is, right? They don't typically come to you thinking it's worth less than it actually is. And they're not selling because you are like such a wonderful negotiator that you're able to talk the shirt off of people's backs. That is not it at all. So why would someone sell a $55,000 house that needed $10,000 worth of work for $18,000? Why not just put the 10 in it and sell it for $55,000? Don't have the 10. Or if they do have the 10, maybe they are out of time or energy or patience to deal with that problem. And what they want to do is just get rid of the problem. It's not about the money to them. It's really, really not. And if you've never talked to a motivated seller, you don't know that yet. But if you have, you know what I'm talking about. This particular seller bought this property with his wife. Their intention was that it was going to be a rental property. Then she divorced him and moved to Atlanta. It was supposed to be her job to manage it and keep it rented and so on. He had a full-time job. He worked about 60 hours a week, ironically working for a rental property company. And what he told me when I first talked to him in July was he just did not have time to deal with it. He just, he knew that he didn't have to sell it cheap. He could fix it up. He had the skills to fix it up. He just didn't have the time to deal with it. Now, one smart thing that he did was he had his brother living in the house, rent-free, of course, in order to protect it. Because in this neighborhood, the property would literally be vacant for less than 10 hours, and the metal would be gone. The plumbing would be gone, the wiring would be gone, the sinks would be gone, leave it alone long enough, the shower heads would be gone. I mean, like every piece of metal in the house would be stripped very, very quickly. So having someone continue to live in the house was a good idea, but at the same time it was grating on him, because the deal with the brother was, you, my brother, pay for the utilities, and you fix up the house, and you can stay here for free. Well, guess what the brother had not done? Either of those things. He had not paid any of the utility bills, and he had not done anything to fix up the house. He did a little bit of demolition on things that I wouldn't have thought needed to be demolished, but there it stopped. So it was kind of grating on this guy that his freeloading brother was living in the house and that he couldn't kick him out until it was sold. And even if he did kick him out, that would cause problems at like Thanksgiving dinner, with the family. So when he first called me in July, I made him this offer. I said, I think, you know, for this house and the condition you're describing, I'm be at like $18,000. And he said, I'm not taking $18,000. I paid $26,000 for it. And I said, okay, and is it getting more valuable sitting there with your brother taking walls out for no reason that I can figure out? And he said, well, no, but I know I can sell for more than that. I said, okay, yeah, great, put it in Craigslist, call a realtor, you know, let's see how it goes. Maybe you can get $26,000 for it, but I'm gonna be at 18. Now, when you have a seller that you know is going to end up selling the house for less than he's talking about when you first talk to him, what do you do with that seller? You follow up, right? You follow up regularly. What I do is I put a reminder in my Outlook, and it's you know how you can make it recurring? I have it recur every 30 days until the time that I call him and either his phone number's shut off or he tells me he sold the house to somebody else or he says, stop calling me. So when I checked up with him in October, I called him in August and September. When I called him in October, the first thing he said was, is that $18,000 offer still open? And I said, well, I don't know, let's go see. Let's find out if it's in the same shape or better, maybe, than it was when I saw it in July. So in October, he took $18,000 for a house that he insisted that he would die before he took less than $26,000 for. Why do you think that was? Was it because I magicked him into doing it? Seller voodoo doll? It probably was snowing by October. He just, you know, the more time passed and the more he realized that he wasn't getting that price he wanted, the more attractive that $18,000 offer sounded. I mean, that was the bottom line. Now, here is how unhappy he was with his deal. 2 weeks later, he called and he said, you know, I told you I worked for a rental property company. He said, my boss has a wife, and the wife is harassing him to build her a new house. And he's found this particular lot that he wants, and he's got to pay $10,000 for it, so he's got to get rid of one of his houses. And he's got this house, it's like half a mile from the one you bought the other day or a couple weeks ago. And I was wondering if I should put you in touch with him. And I said, well, tell me about the house. He said, oh, I've been in it. It's, you know, it's in pretty good shape, and it's rented for $850 a month. And he wants $10,000 for it. Because he has to sell it in the next 2 weeks or he's going to lose the contract on the lot he's trying to buy. And I said, all right, can you meet me over there now? You know, let's go, let's do this. When I got there, the boss said, I don't know what Joe told you, but I'm not going to take $10,000 for this house. I got to get at least 12. Yeah, and I said, wow, man, yeah, you did tell me 10. I don't know. Well, you know, maybe, yeah, if you can sign the contract right now, I guess we can do $12,000. I sold this contract for $15,000. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't sell it for a $3,000 profit. I sold the contract for $15,000. This landlord paid $28,000 for a property that, if the tenant moved out, needed about $3,000 in paint and carpet, and had a tenant in it at $850 a month with 8 months remaining on a lease. Is that a pretty good deal for the landlord? Yeah. This guy who owns 45 rental properties, is he stupid? Do you think he didn't know he could sell his property for more money than that if he was willing to wait? Of course not. So that one we closed right like 2 days before Christmas. Really good Christmas. $18,000 check. And everybody was happy with the deal. And of course the tenant was unaffected. He just got a new landlord. That's all that's going on there. So do you think maybe, from what you've heard so far, this is something you might need to go out and just try? Just try it and see if there really are sellers out here like this, and see if there really are people who are willing to sell their houses cheaply because they've got problems other than I need the most money I can possibly get. Yeah, definitely worth a try. So sellers sell cheap not because they're dumb or they're uneducated or you talk them into something. They sell because there's something going on with their lives. Sometimes it's financial issues. Sometimes it's health stuff that's keeping them from fixing up the house on what day was that we closed Latonia? We were out of town. Wednesday. On last Wednesday, yeah. I got a house for free. Yeah, got a house for free. Yep. Got a, and it had walls and ceilings and floors and a roof. Yes. Yes, it was not like, you know, a crater or something. Yeah, I got a call from a RIA member that I'd met probably 15 years ago. Hadn't seen him in about 5 years. And he called and he said, listen, I just, you know, I had open heart surgery last year, and there's this house that I've actually owned it for 10 years, and I've been meaning to rehab it the whole time, and I never have, and nobody's ever lived in it during that entire time. And basically, my wife's going to divorce me if I don't get rid of it, so I'm wondering if you know anybody who will take a house for free. And I said, are you serious? Did you just ask me that question? And he said, yeah. And I said, I will. And he said, without seeing it? And I said, well, I mean, I'd like to find out what it is I'm taking for free, but I can pretty much guarantee you I'm going to take this house for free. And I paid the closing costs, which were about $200. I paid for title searches about $200, and I took on his taxes, which he just paid in January. So I took on like 1 month's worth of taxes. And again, this guy's been in real estate for a long time. Why did he give away his house for free? Combination of health issues and the fact that his wife was telling him to give away the house or she was going to leave him. Sometimes it's bad tenants that motivate people. Sometimes it's that they inherited the property. And sometimes, in addition to that, there are property problems with the property. There's almost always a personal thing going on, but then what compounds that is that the rental's gone vacant, or that the code enforcement department has issued orders of some sort against the property. So you're usually going to find that there's two things involved here. Now, when we talk about how to find the deals on Saturday, the 21st, we're going to talk about how to identify where these people are and what to say to them to get them to call you. These sellers are selling because it is more painful to them to keep the property than it is to take your offer. And that's so important to remember so that you don't feel like what I'm doing is I'm ripping people off. No, there is somebody who has a situation that you did not create, that you had nothing to do with, that you are in some way helping to alleviate by taking a piece of it off of their plate, right? We got to focus on the right properties. The right properties are ones where you have the largest number of potential buyers. Any kind of property is theoretically wholesalable, right? You theoretically could wholesale a strip mall. If you get under property cheap enough and find a buyer who wanted to pay more. Strip malls are not the kind of properties we focus on, though, because there are a lot fewer buyers for those sorts of bigger commercial type deals than there are for the ones that we are going to focus on, which are primarily single family homes, but also small multi-units, up to about 4 families. I have wholesaled larger buildings, 10 to 15 units. I've got one under contract right now that's a 24 unit. They are much more complicated to sell. This is not your water, right? This is mine? Okay. I just don't want to steal her water, or I wanted to ask her before I did. I know that the 24 unit is going to take 60 to 90 days to sell. The typical single-family home that I have for sale, if it is a good deal, is going to sell within 5 days in the market right now, because there are so many more buyers who are looking for that property than who are looking for the 24-unit building. Condos are going to work down here because people want to live in condos. Where I live, the condo is the most valuable it's ever going to get on the day it's built. And it is going to depreciate every year thereafter like a mobile home, okay? Another thing that you're going to be able to be very successful wholesaling down here is mobile homes. I have wholesaled both condos and mobile homes in the Cincinnati area, but you guys got to have a lot more down here than we have up there. You're going to have a lot more sellers. who want to sell them, and you're going to have a lot more good deals that you can find, and you're going to have a lot more buyers for those as well. The right properties are going to be in particular kinds of neighborhoods. I divide the world into 5 kinds of neighborhoods. Type 1 is the worst, type 5 is the best, type 1 is a war zone. If you guys want to see a really and truly war zone, you need to drive over to Miami. You're not going to see one here. Type 5 is a luxury area. Type 5 is the gated communities, waterfront, mansions, that sort of thing. As investors in general, we typically don't work in type 1 or type 5, right? We're usually in 2, 3, and 4. 2 is a rental neighborhood like the one I just showed you, where most of the people who live there rent. People don't go in there and buy homes. The second, type 3 is the bread and butter, starter home, modest little houses that people buying their first house are going to go get an FHA loan on. And then type 3 is the move-up neighborhood. It's better school system, more amenities, but still not your type 5 luxury neighborhoods. Now, the reason that we focus in these areas is that's where there are the most buyers. If there were lots of buyers in war zones, they would not be war zones. They would not be there would not be 50% board ups in those areas because people wouldn't be buying them and fixing them, and they're not. So rental areas, first-time home buyer areas, and move-up areas are the 3 places that you are going to focus your attention, because these are the 3 easiest areas to sell. Finally, condition. The condition of the property. Condition is a motivator to sellers, yes? If their house is in great shape, do they usually get super motivated to sell it cheap? No, because they can sell it a little bit cheap and still sell it quickly, right? It's when the property gets into a condition where it's not really livable that they get real motivated to sell at these lower prices. Now, you can wholesale houses, wholesale properties in shockingly bad condition, like worse than you would ever think anyone would ever want. It's all about the price. You want to see the ugliest house I ever wholesaled? Yeah. In like 600 plus deals, the ugliest one I ever wholesaled was this one. Not so bad. Hey, yeah, that sheet of plywood's probably worth 50, 60 bucks, right?
The roof is white. Is that fire damage?
Yeah, it had a fire. The fire was it was limited to this room, so a lot of it, this siding melted off. This window broke out because of the heat, and there was also a hole in the roof, which the firemen put there when they were putting out the fire. So it had a lot of smoke damage. It had some water damage. The owner, the guy who sold it to me, had lived there. He was the one who started the fire, actually. He was given an insurance payoff by his insurance company that completely paid off his loan and bought him a condo for cash. So how much did he need to get to sell this house? Nothing. Now, sadly, he wouldn't take nothing. Sadly, he insisted on getting $3,500 for this property. And let me tell you, at this time, when I sold this property, I wasn't sure if anyone was going to want it, even at a super low price. So I kind of took a leap of faith. I signed a contract with the guy for what he wanted for the house, which was, by the way, $3,500. And I put an ad out there. I called my buyers. I said, hey, who does fire restoration? I can sell this house. It needs $43,000 worth of work, and I am selling it for $9,000. Second person who looked at it bought it. Because he could put $9,000 in. He could buy it for $9,000. He could put $43,000 in it, and what he had at the end was a $110,000 house. Makes sense, right? It was scary at the time. But it made a lot of sense, and I made $6,500 off the deal. This is actually not my deal. This was one that was done by one of my students in Phoenix, whose name is Dory. This was the first deal she ever did. House prices in Phoenix are shocking. Like, you think the house prices are pretty high here? In Phoenix, they are shocking. This is a $900,000 house. And it's only in a move-up area. It's not even gated community. It's just, I mean, it's a nice neighborhood, but it's not a spectacular neighborhood. She got this one under contract with the state. It needed, with an estate, so someone had inherited the property. It needed $90,000 worth of updating, and it was all updating. Because in a $900,000 house, you don't put a $6,500 kitchen in, right? You put a $15,000 kitchen in with custom everything. So it needed $90,000 worth of work. She sold the deal for $650,000. She made $51,000 on it. That was her very first deal. And I only recently exceeded that with a one-time deal profit, because in higher markets there is more margin for you to make money. Now let's say that you did not make $51,000 on your next deal. Let's just imagine that wasn't in the cards for you. Let's imagine that you were only going to make 1/10 of that. You're going to wholesale a deal and make $5,100 in the next 10 days. Would that still be okay? Can you live with $5,100? Okay. This is a land dominium that I wholesaled a year and a half ago or so. Land dominium being it was in an HOA, but you own the land underneath your condo. So basically it's a condo, except it's just attached to the building next door. This one needed about $30,000 in updating. I sold the deal for $52,000. I made $10,000. And then here is my favorite deal of all time. Every instructor has this deal they talk about that is like the most money they ever made in their lives on a single deal, only they tell it like this is standard. Like this is what I make all the time. This is not what I make all the time. This was an extraordinary deal, and that's the thing about wholesaling. I mean, there are times when you walk away from a deal going, man, I only made $5,000. Go do it again. And there's times when you hit doubles and triples and you make $10,000 and $20,000, and then there's the time when you make $70,000 on a single wholesale deal. This was the buyer, the guy who bought it from me, sold it for $759 when he was finished. This is in one of those luxury neighborhoods that I said you probably shouldn't be looking in. But it was a very unique situation involving a short sale on a property that was built in 1972 and last updated in 1972. And so he came in and he redid everything. He added a second story to this addition. He moved the windows around, put in a bath. I mean, he did so much work to it. He did about $250,000 of work to it. But I sold it to him for $200. He put $250 in it. Sold it for $759. So you think he was a pretty happy camper? You think I was jealous that I only made $70 and he made like $300,000 on it? I was not. Because who really took all the risk in that deal? He did. Putting all that money into a deal with all those contractors for all those months. Yeah, he put the real risk into it. I made $70,000 in a month and walked away. So I was pretty happy. Right evaluation. We said you got to do the right evaluation. So what you need to master here to do this is finding the after repair value of houses. Hint, it is not the tax value. Those things are unrelated to one another. I don't care what the county is basing what they're charging taxes on. That is not the value of the property. How do you find the after repair value of a property? Comps, and not the highest price comp in the neighborhood. The comps that are most similar to the one that you are trying to sell will give you the after repair value. The second thing that you need to learn to do is quickly go through these properties and figure out what is wrong with them and what a typical buyer is going to do to that property based on its end use. If the property is in a rental neighborhood, are you going to do this inspection as if the property was going to be resold to a homeowner? No, because you will end up with much higher repair costs than anyone's actually going to spend on that house. On the flip side, if it's obviously a retail property, it's one that someone's going to buy it, fix it, and resell it, are you going to go, well, these kitchen cabinets are metal and they're from the 1950s, but if you put a coat of paint on them, they'd be fine? No. So understanding what your buyer is going to do to a property and then going through a particular property and writing down all the stuff that's going to be done and then attaching prices to that. Attaching realistic labor and materials prices to that. You don't assume your buyer is going to do his own work, because professional real estate investors do not do their own work. They have the work done. Now, do they pay the Sears price to do the work? Do they pay Sears $20,000 to put a roof on a 1,200 square foot house? They do not. They have better prices than, you know, the general public can get, but you need to understand what those prices are, because if you do not have these numbers, you do not know what to offer. What you offer is based strictly on those two numbers, ARV and repair costs. Don't make the mistake of trying to take the maximum amount of money out of each deal that you can. Leave lots of money on the table for the buyer. Make it really worth his while to write you that check, take over that contract, and go close it. Because if he likes your deal once, guess what he will do? He will come back and buy again and again and again. So the most that you're going to sell for, like the highest sale price you should be predicting for any given property, is the after repaired value times 0.7 minus the repair costs. That is your probable sale price. 95% of the time, that's the formula you're going to use. There are exceptions to the formula. If the house is a burnout, your buyer is going to want to make more than 30% of the after repair value as his profit. If the house is pretty close to perfect, you can sell it for a little bit more than 70% of the after repair value less repair costs. But most of the time, most deals fall into this category. So if that's what you can sell it for, that is not what you can offer. What you can offer is after repair value times 0.7 minus repair costs minus your profit. That is what is often called maximum allowable offer, or MAO, or MAO. If you hear a wholesaler or a retailer referring to MAO, it's not what you think. It is maximum allowable offer. Everybody got that? So paperwork, that's the last kind of crucial piece to all of this. And another one that drives me nuts when I'm working with other wholesalers. I bought a house last summer from a wholesaler, because I do that. If somebody else finds a great deal and it looks like a good rental to me or something, I'll buy. I don't have any problem paying a wholesaler. He sent me an email. Numbers looked like they could be within the realm of reality. Went over and looked at the property. I said, actually, this looks pretty good. This is like the kind of house that I want to buy. Let's do it. And he said, great, what do we do now? And I said, are you serious? He said, well, I don't have any like assignments. I think you're supposed to do an assignment. And I said, what value did you bring to this? I mean, basically you found and you negotiated a good deal. But if you had been talking to a typical buyer and not one who's also a wholesaler, you would both be floundering around lost right now. Because like you do not know what the next thing to sign is. This is insane. There are 3 pieces of documentation that you are going to need to do this deal. The first one is the purchase agreement. That is what ties up the property. How many of you are licensed real estate agents? Okay, me too. You know the board contract, the 5-page long, legal size, 5-point type.
Ours is 11 pages.
11 pages long. Let's say you were making a deal directly with a seller. There's no other real estate agent involved. Do you think that is the contract you should put in front of a civilian seller? No, because, and it's not because it's not a perfectly fine contract. There's two big reasons. Number one, there's a lot of stuff in that contract that really only applies to listed properties, right? There's a lot of stuff in there that says, I get to put my sign up, and I get to, realtors are gonna get paid commissions and blah, blah, blah. And if you're working directly with a seller, you don't need all of that stuff. And if you were to go through with a black marker and cross out every single line that had nothing to do with the buyer, which is you in this case, and the seller, you would probably end up with about 1 page of text left. So just simplify it and use the 1 page of text. I have a 1-page contract that I use when I'm working directly with sellers. Now, when I'm making offers on MLS deals, I do use the board contract. But when I'm working directly with the seller, I use a 1-page purchase contract. It says, I will buy, you will sell. Here's the property in question. You'll give me clear title. You're swearing that there's no building orders, or it's not a historic district, it's not a floodplain, or it is. You can check that box too. I have the right to have inspections done at my expense as the buyer for as long as I feel like that needs to go on, and if I don't like the results of the inspection, I'm not buying your house. That's the one contingency that I have in the contract. Here's another piece of misinformation / bad training. A lot of folks will sell you contracts that have like 9 contingencies. There's an inspection contingency, there's a partner approval clause, there's a financing clause, there's a this, there's a that. All that does is scream, I'm not closing this, right? When you give yourself 9 ways to get out of a contract, doesn't that pretty well tell the seller what your intention is to get out of the contract? The inspection contingency will do everything that you need a contingency to do. Number one, it gets you the ability to get people into the property. What is the point of that? Buyers want to see the inside of the property. It does not matter how much they trust you, they want to see what they're buying. Number two, it gives you an out if you have a series of buyers that come to you and they say, well, it's not that I don't want the deal, it's that I don't want the deal at your price. If they don't want the deal at your price, what has probably gone wrong? You have it under contract for too much, which means you either overestimated the after repair value or you underestimated the repair cost. So in that case, you can get out of the contract. However, your goal should be to be so good at estimating values and repair costs that you never have to do that. I haven't dropped a contract for any reason other than like the seller couldn't sell it. Like oh, did I forget to mention the $1 million IRS lien? I didn't think that would come up as a topic. I have not dropped a contract because I couldn't sell it at the price I wanted to sell it for in 15 years. I mean, it's been a long time. Now, the first year I was doing this, yeah, there were 1 or 2 that I messed up. I messed up the evaluation, and when I went back to the seller and I said, listen, I've had a bunch of inspectors in here and they've all told me the same thing, which is that this furnace needs to go. I didn't realize that this furnace needed to go, but they're telling me it does, and they're telling me it's going to cost $3,000. So if we can consider a price of $3,000 less, I can still do this, but if not, we just need to tear up the contract per the inspection clause. And they said, no, I don't want to sell it for $3,000 less. And I said, okay, sorry. We shook hands and walked away, right? Because there was that contingency. The second piece of paper that you need is one that you have probably not heard of, because as far as I know, my attorney and I invented this, but it was for good reason. We didn't invent a piece of paper to complicate anything. We use something called a purchase agreement for assignment. And the purchase agreement for assignment outlines the entire deal between you and your buyer. It says the buyer is giving me $6,900. He is then taking over the contract on 123 Easy Street. He will fulfill all of the terms and conditions of that contract. He agrees that he's already done his own inspections and is not going to exercise the inspection contingency. He agrees that he's a big boy and isn't relying on me for any of the numbers. In other words, he's done his own repair costs, he's done his own evaluation. That one's about a page long. The second one is the actual assignment of the contract. This one doesn't say I'm assigning you the contract. It says you are buying the assignment of the contract. The assignment of contract says, for $1 and other good and valuable considerations, Vena Jones-Cox assigns her interest in the contract on 123 Easy Street to Bill the buyer. That's all it says. It's like one paragraph long. Does anybody know why I use 2 contracts instead of 1? There's a really good reason for this. Huh? Well, it has to do with what the title company is going to put on the closing statement, right? Because the seller knows exactly how much money I'm making. You know how I know he knows that? He gave me a certified check for that amount at the time at which I assigned the contract. Around 2007, because of some bad guys, mostly in the finance world, Fannie Mae issued a letter to title companies in regards to Fannie Mae closings. And what it said was, any contingent transaction to any sale that you are aware of has to be disclosed on the closing statement. Now, it only applied to Fannie Mae loans, but title companies decided that if they knew about an assignment fee, they had to put it on the HUD-1. Even though it was something that was outside of the closing and that has nothing to do with the buyer, who now is somebody other than you, and the seller. I'm really not worried about my buyers knowing how much money I make. I'm a little worried about my sellers seeing a $6,900 or a $70,000 fee to me on their closing statement. Can you understand why? They were perfectly happy with the deal when they agreed to it, and then maybe later on they go, now wait a minute, well, I don't understand what happened here. How did you make all this money? Why am I not getting that money? Right? I was happy before, but now I see that there was more money I wanted. So by using the 2 different agreements, this one gives the buyer what he needs. This one allows him to write the assignment fee off his taxes. It shows what the transaction was. But the second very simple piece of paperwork that assigns the contract is all the title company gets to see. And if the title company sees $1 and other good and valuable considerations as the assignment fee, what are they going to put on the closing statement? $1. I'm okay with $1. The other thing that the purchase agreement for assignment has allowed us to do is, because I get paid up front, I get paid when I assign you this valuable contract. It used to be the case that I would get very good buyers who would come to me and say, oh man, you know, I really want this deal, but you're asking $10,000 up front. I've only got 5 right now. It's going to take me a week to get the other 5. And I'd have to say, well, I guess we're going to have to wait a week, because I'm not assigning you the contract for $5,000. It's $10,000. Well, the purchase agreement for assignment also says you owe me 10. So far, you've given me 5, and when you give me the other 5, that's when you get the assignment of the contract. Does that make sense? Yeah. So now I can go ahead and take their money and get it out of their hands so they don't go buy somebody else's deal, and still have not assigned the contract to them. Okay? Now, how many of you have been definitively taught that you get paid at closing on wholesale deals? Most of you who have taken classes have been definitively taught that. Who decided that? Where is that written in the Florida Revised Code? I'll tell you where that came from. It came from wholesalers assuming that their buyers would not pay them until there was a closing. It is not true. Just try it. Just try it my way and see if it works, okay? Because it's obviously a lot safer for you to get paid up front than it is to wait until closing to get paid. Now, I will tell you one thing. I do not ask my buyers for money until I can show them a completed title search. Because I can see a buyer saying, well, I'm not going to give you $10,000 when I don't even know if this guy can sell the property. But if I have a completed title search that says it's all good, the guy does own it, he can sell it, there aren't any liens on it, it's pretty much ready to close at that point, right? All we have to do is just pick a closing date and location, and we're ready to close. So the other secret to my success here in terms of getting paid up front is that I show my buyer a completed title search that was completed by an attorney or title company. When are those things paid for, by the way? When are title searches paid for? At closing. Who pays for them? Buyer, the seller. Okay, can we agree that it's either the buyer or the seller for sure? Okay, and what determines who paid for it? The contract, right? The contract. So can you order a title search today for a property that's not scheduled to close for a month and actually get that title search back and not write a check for it? Yeah, because that's how business is done, right? That's how it works. Your buyer or your seller will pay for it at the closing depending on which one the contract says will be doing it. Okay, so some myths. I think we've crushed this one into the ground. Wholesalers do not get paid at closing. Wholesalers get paid when they decide they get paid. And for me, that is when I assign the contract. Now, if I am working with a buyer that I've never worked with before, and he says, look, I don't know you. I don't know if I can trust you with my $10,000. My next statement to him will be, all right, would you like my attorney to hold it in escrow or your attorney to hold it in escrow? You pick. Well, one way or another, you put it with a third party, we will have a set of instructions for that escrow agent that say, Mr. Escrow Agent, this money is to be given to Vena on the date of the closing, scheduled or actual, whichever comes first. The only way that Bill over here gets his money back is if the seller cannot or will not show up at the closing. Otherwise, it absolutely goes to Vena. If a buyer says, well, I'm not doing that either, guess what I think? I think he doesn't have the money, right? I mean, if it's with his attorney with instructions that we both agree to about what's going to happen to that money, what is the problem exactly? And usually it turns out that they either don't have the money or they're really not committed to closing. Because no one's really committed until they write you a check. They're just not. They may swear they are, they may swear they're ready, but it ain't sold until you got the money in your hand. Second myth is this whole idea of a turnkey done-for-you wholesaling system. I wish there were such a thing that you could just, put a piece of software in your computer and, by golly, it would buy and sell properties for you while you sleep, which is an actual sales pitch I saw for a wholesaling course. It said it will buy and sell properties for you while you sleep. Which really made me wonder why I've been working like a sucker. Guys, you have to do work to get results. You know that, right? I mean, I know here in the United States, the sales pitch of something being effortless is a big. Look at diet pills. Look at the diet industry, right? We fall for that stuff. I just got to take a pill. I don't have to actually change anything, and I'll shed 100 pounds just like that unretouched photo right there on television, right? It is the most highly paid work you will ever do in your life. Wholesalers make more per hour in terms of the hours they work than anybody else in real estate. And I've never seen anybody deny that. Even like hardcore retailers and hardcore landlords will say, well, yeah, as a number of hours for dollars, you're definitely making more than I am. But there are things you have to do. You have to talk to sellers, or someone has to talk to sellers, right? You have to go look at properties. You have to evaluate them. You have to do this work. It cannot be done for you. If that system existed, trust me, I would be using it. But it does not. So just understand that it's a great business. It's a fun business. It is a business. You're going to have to do things in order to get the results that you want. Oh, I love this one. I get this from other real estate agents a lot. I really don't understand the difference between what you do and what I do. I mean, when you're wholesaling properties, you're basically just being a glorified agent, whatever that is. And in fact, you should have a real estate license in order to do this. Well, that might be true if I were selling houses. I am not selling houses. What am I selling? Contracts. And the fact that I round up these sellers, the fact that I go out and evaluate the properties and negotiate a deal that I know I can sell for more than what I negotiated means I am not doing what a real estate agent does. Because what a real estate agent does is they get a marketing agreement with sellers, a listing agreement, right? That's just a marketing agreement. It says I get to put your house out there and see who wants to buy it, and if someone comes and buys it, I will get a commission, right? I will get a piece of the value of that house, regardless of whether it's a good deal, bad deal, whatever. I get a piece of the value of that house. You bring an enormous amount of value to these transactions, both for your buyers who think about it. You just went out, you did all the pieces of a deal that they would have had to have done themselves had you not done it. And then you just handed it to them all wrapped up in a nice little bow. I've already negotiated it for you. Here's what you got to pay. Say yes or no. You don't have to go look at 20 houses to find this one. You just go decide if you want this one or not. And you also bring value that agents can't bring to the kinds of sellers that you work with. Because the kinds of sellers you work with, it's not realistically an option for them to sell through MLS. And I'll tell you, a lot of them have already tried. You'd be amazed at how many people I talk to that they're coming out of a 6-month listing agreement where the property did not sell. Talked to a guy today, 2.5 years that property's been on the market with an agent, hasn't sold. He said, a lot of people have come through, but we haven't even gotten an offer. Yeah. So, yeah, you're not just an agent without a license. You are a real estate professional who is out there doing the things that real estate entrepreneurs do. Finding deals, evaluating properties, putting them under contract, and selling the contracts. Wholesaling is a hustle. I keep having arguments about this online. There's this thing that has happened lately where a lot of new wholesalers on the forums are using this word. They're saying, you know, I'm out there, I'm hustling, I got my hustle on. It's, you know, I'm in the hustle, and I keep trying to slap them down for a couple of reasons. Number one, the implication of the word hustle is that someone is being hustled, right? And that is not what happened. That's not what's happening. If you are not making a deal for the seller that he likes, guess what? He ain't going to sign the contract. If you're not making a deal that a buyer likes, guess what? You're not going to sell it. The other implication that I don't like here is that it's like what you do is you go out and throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. You put lots of properties under contract, and you hope that some of them get accepted, and then you hope that some of them sell. And I actually do know people who literally put 20 properties under contract for every one they actually sell. And what does that tell you about the prices at which they're putting them under contract? Too high, right? Because in this market they would sell if they were good deals. And that is ethically problematic for me because I can tell you something about sellers. Even when you say, okay, we're signing this contract, it's got this contingency, I may not buy it if it fails inspection. When they sign the contract, guess what they do? They spend the money mentally, right? They assume it's going to close, like, thank goodness that's over with. And if 19 out of 20 of them who sign contracts with you are later going to get disappointed, I don't think you're running a good business. I think your goal should be not to put properties under contract that you can't sell, and to sell everything you put under contract. So rather than be a hustler, please be a business person who happens to have real estate contracts as your product. And then this thing about, you know, I don't really need to like do any training or anything. I could just go on these forums and I can ask questions and people will answer my questions. I can just say like, what is your best marketing method? And people will answer that question, and I can say, has anybody got a contract I can use? And people will send me contracts, and I can tell you that as I monitor these things, the free advice that you get is worth every penny you're paying for it. I see advice being handed out on those things that people are taking seriously that ranges from just stupid and it's not going to work to out and out illegal. Like seriously, people telling people, oh, don't even put the property under contract in MLS, just go find a buyer for it, and when you found a buyer who's agreed to pay a price, then go put it under contract. I'm sorry. What? You are out advertising the sale of a contract that you don't have? You don't have the contract and you're out there telling people that you're going to sell it to them? The world does not work that way. So just shortcut it, okay, and spend a little bit of time and money getting appropriately trained to do this right and do it right from the beginning. I can tell you it's really hard when you have developed a reputation for yourself of being a bad wholesaler. And I say bad, your buyers decide one of two things. If you're offering bad deals, they decide one of two things. They either decide you don't know what you're doing, which is probably the reality, or they decide that you do know what you're doing and you're intentionally trying to rip people off by charging them too much for properties. Once you have that reputation, it's kind of hard to overcome because you know people talk about you. The real estate world's a small world, and people will say, "Hey, should I buy from this guy?" And someone who's remembering a deal you offered 2 years ago when you were a newbie says, "Oh no, I don't know what he's doing." So just get trained to do it right from the first in the first place. I can help you to do that with my home study courses, Real Estate Goddess's Guide to Wholesaling and the Real Estate Goddess's Guide to Building a Wholesaling Business. This is a 2-part home study training, and if you've never done a wholesale deal before, the piece that you're going to want to pay attention to right now is the green piece, because the Real Estate Goddess's Guide to Wholesaling teaches you how to do these deals we've been talking about this evening in a very easy to understand, step-by-step, give you all the forms, all the contracts, all the resources you need to do it. It teaches you what you need to know about getting the leads in the first place. So how to build up that lead funnel so that people are calling you and saying, "Hey, I've got this house that I need to sell. Can you help me out with that?" It also teaches you how to screen those leads, which is super important. How many of you are doing some marketing for motivated sellers? You've got something out there where people are calling you. All right, is it the case for any of you that even 50% of the sellers who call you are actually good prospects?
No.
Not so much, right? I mean, a lot of the folks who call you will basically sort of say something along the lines of, "Well, I wasn't actually thinking about selling my house, but you did write me a postcard, so I figured, what the heck, I'd call you and see if you'd pay me full price." Oh, and all cash, right? Full price and no terms. So it's important that you figure that out within the first minute or two of these conversations, which sort of person you have. And there's a series of questions that you can ask folks to find out whether they're truly in pain, whether they truly need to sell and therefore are going to need to sell at the kind of price you can offer as a wholesaler. It also teaches you what to look for when evaluating properties. There's an entire chapter on, all right, so if it's a rental, what sort of things do you need to be looking for? If it's a probable retail resale, what kinds of things do you need to be looking for? It teaches you how to estimate repair costs, do the ARVs, and make the right offer. Now I said that 95% of the time, you're going to use that ARV times 0.7 minus repair cost formula. The other formulas that you're going to use the other 5% of the time are also in the home study course, and it tells you when you might choose a different formula and what that one is. It teaches you how to legally tie up the properties with the contracts, how to find the buyers. Now, in the market right now, it's very easy to find buyers simply by using some of the free online resources like Craigslist. But ultimately, wouldn't you just like to have a list of people that you know that they want to buy, and you know what they want to buy, and you know what their ability to buy is, and what kind of work they want to do, and what is that called when you have a list of those people? It's called a buyer's list. And I teach you how to build a buyer's list, because the buyer's list has been a real key to my success. When I can sell a property in an average of 5 days, it ain't through Craigslist. It's because I know I've got buyers that I know what they want, and I know how to get a hold of them, and I know how to get them to respond and actually go look at my property. I'm going to give this part away right now because it's important and I don't want you to walk out of here without it. One of the things that the divisions of real estate are looking at as they are looking at wholesalers In other words, if an agent calls the division and says, I think this guy's acting as a realtor without a license, they're going to go investigate that. They're going to go check that out. They're going to see what you're doing. And one of the things that they look at is how you are advertising your deals for sale. Unfortunately, Craigslist does not have a contracts for sale section. So where do we have to put our deals? In the real estate for sale section, but is that what we actually have? Do we have real estate for sale? No, not unless we're going to close it first, right? So at the bottom of your ads that you are putting out to the public, whether these be on Craigslist or Zillow or even on flyers that you might bring here, you need to put wording that says, I am assigning my interest in a purchase contract on this property. Because now you are absolutely not misleading anybody, right? I am assigning my interest in a purchase contract on this property. And it doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to put it in 14-point type or anything, but it needs to be there in your ads in case you're ever accused of trying to sell someone else's house or acting as an agent. Pre-screening buyers, of course, is another important thing that I show you in the home study course. How to make your lowball offers, because that's what they're going to be, and still have enough rapport with the seller that even though he's really disappointed and maybe doesn't want to take it right now, that he doesn't get mad and he lets you follow up with him so that when he gets ready to take it, you are still on speaking terms. Would that be useful at all? I got to tell you, a lot of times I am offering sellers 20 to 30% of what they want for their house. Whatever the first number out of their mouth is, my number is going to be less than half of that. And yet most of the sellers I talk to, even when they say no to me, they give me permission to follow up. They thank me for my time. And it's all about how you talk to them. And I show you how to talk to them. I give you actual examples of things that you can say to folks. Like, here's one of my favorite things to say. Listen, Mr. Seller, I hear what you're saying about wanting $55,000 for your house. And if I could give that to you, I wouldn't have split second. You seem like a really nice guy. But I got this formula that I have to do based on what it's going to cost me to fix it up and then what it's going to be worth and what it's going to rent for afterwards. And what that formula is telling me is that I'm probably going to be at 30. And I know that's not what you wanted to hear, and it's probably not going to work for you, but that's where I'm going to be. Now, if somebody said that to you, how mad are you going to get, really? Right? Blame the formula. Blame the formula. And you don't have to have these like really nasty adversarial negotiations with people if you will keep in mind that you both have the same goal. He wants to sell and you want to buy, right? So you both have the same goal. If you can kind of keep that in mind and read this chapter and listen to these audios and see how I negotiate with folks, I think it'll be a lot easier for you to make that kind of offer. Getting into the business building section, which is the blue course, I've got an entire chapter in here on how to minimize the taxes on your wholesale business. Wholesaling is not real estate investing. Wholesaling is a dealer activity. Does everybody understand what the tax outcome of a dealer activity is? Yeah, it means you not only get to pay taxes on the money you made in terms of like your federal income taxes, but you also get to pay that cool self-employment tax. You know, the Social Security that you're just absolutely sure is still going to be there when you want some of it. So right now you may be thinking, man, I wish I had that problem. I wish minimizing taxes was my biggest issue. It will be in about 6 months. You go out and you do some of these deals and you will be shocked at how quickly you find yourself in what is effectively a 45% tax bracket. Because you are in the maximum possible federal tax bracket plus the self-employment taxes. So it does become a big concern. And by the way, one of the ways that you can really minimize your taxes is in pay zero is do these deals in your self-directed IRA. Did you know you could do that? Yeah, I've got an entire chapter and a big chunk of the audio about how to do deals in your self-directed IRA to build up your retirement plan really fast. How to create systems. so that you can start hiring VAs right away to do some of the stuff that's kind of below your pay grade, like getting mailing lists of sellers, like running comps. You know, after you've done that a couple dozen times and you understand how to do it, there's no reason you can't write a system for it and have someone else, probably in the Philippines, doing it for you. And by the way, if you're sitting there thinking, well, I can't afford that, it's like $3 an hour to have this done. It shows you how to assign non-assignable contracts. So when you run across a bank-owned property or a short sale property that you want to flip, how to do that. How to finance deals for your buyers without using your own money. About 35% of the deals, not that many, 25% of the deals that I sold last year, I didn't say to the buyer, you have to give me cash, then you have to give the seller cash. What I said to him is, you have to give me cash, and then I'll carry payments on the property for a year while you fix it up. Do you think that makes deals more attractive to your buyers? Yeah, do you think that you can sell them for more money that way? Absolutely. And you don't have to have your own cash to do that. And I explain how to do that in the Real Estate Goddess's Guide to Creating a Wholesaling Business. I already talked about building up the self-directed retirement fund. It includes all of the forms that I use in my office, everything from the contracts we talked about to the things as simple as the seller intake forms, to the escrow agreements that we use when somebody wants to escrow their money with an attorney. So all of the stuff that I have developed and used and kept for the last 19 years to help me run my business, you just get it. It just comes with this home study course. I think one of the biggest values of borrowing someone else's expertise is that they can tell you what mistakes not to make, right? If you can just avoid all the pitfall stuff and just kind of follow the path that actually works, it's so much easier and it's so much cheaper and it's so much better than trying to figure out for yourself. And one of the things that you will find about me is I'm not, oh, it's all beer and Skittles about the real estate business in general. You know, it's, is that a Midwestern saying? Is that, you guys don't, okay. I don't actually drink beer and eat Skittles, it's disgusting, but he does. Sunshine and lollipops, there you go. It's not all sunshine and lollipops.